watching Commodity Central with me, Kanishka Sarkar, and it's time now to put the spotlight on India's coal imports. Now, India's thermal coal imports, they are cooling as a domestic supply that is strengthening. Renewables are scaling up and sourcing patterns. They are shifting from Indonesia to Russia and the US now. Now, to decode what's driving these trends, pricing signals, and what lies ahead, we are now joined by Nishtha Mukherjee Sinha, the GM Pricing, Indexing and Content at Pigment. Hi, Nishtha. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to the show. And, let's talk about the thermal coal imports. They've fallen about 4% on a year-on-year basis if we talk about the fiscal year for now, that is April to November period. So if you could explain to us, is this cyclical or are we seeing a structural shift? And how much of the import cool down is due to domestic supply versus renewables gaining share or any other factors that are at play right now?
Thank you so much. And yes, so very rightly pointed out that India's thermal coal imports have come down so far in the fiscal April to November FY26. So if we go by the figures, imports have fallen by 4% to 112 million tons during April to November 2025, which was 117 million tons in the same period last year. Yes, a few factors which you correctly pointed out, that power consumption in the country has fallen marginally by 0.3% in November and 0.1% during April till November. This is again the effect of prolonged monsoons that we saw this time and relatively cooler temperatures, which resulted in overall drop in imports. Again, another factor that resulted in drop in imports were, of course, the higher targets of domestic coal production that have been set by the Indian government. So in FY25, we saw India's domestic coal production crossed 1 billion ton mark nationwide. And for FY26, India's coal production target has been set at 1.16 billion tons, which is definitely higher than last fiscal. Also, the stockpiles at the thermal coal power plants have been higher, which was another additional reason that resulted in drop in imports. Coming on to the second part of your question, how have the renewables performed? If we compare on April to November period, India's coal-based power generation remained on a declining trend and fell by 5% on year-on-year basis. Meanwhile, renewable energy generation recorded a sharp growth of 22% and hydropower output rose by 13%. So as a result, the share of coal in India's power generation has declined by around 5%, while that of renewables has increased. So the key reasons that we could understand is that reduced dependence on coal, rise in renewable energy generation, particularly due to early onset and prolonged monsoons, which resulted in lower electricity demand, etc.
That's right. So renewable, the uptick of renewable energy and also the prolonged monsoon that we saw this time around. Those are some of the key reasons why we have seen a decline in imports of coal. But Nisha, in terms of geographies, I wanted to understand Indonesia shipments are down nearly 10%. Russia has emerged as a key swing supplier. So one, explain to us the changing dynamics. And second, how sustainable is this shift given the sanctions and discounts?
Yes, very rightly pointed out that imports from Indonesia have come down by 10% on year-on-year basis during April to November. Important point behind this is that Indonesia has cut down its domestic coal production, and in 2025 it is expected that volumes will be close to 740 million tons compared to 836 million tons that we saw in 2024. So drop in production levels has resulted in lower export volumes from Indonesia, and in the similar manner, it has reflected in India's overall imports as well. Talking about South African coal, which is largely used by sponge iron manufacturers in India, imports from there rose by 4% on a year-on-year basis. This is again because of the fact that India's sponge iron production has increased by 9% on YoY basis. Talking about the other geographies, so Russia and US, both the countries have resulted in increased shipments this year. Right. And overall volumes of imports have risen by 40% and 13%.
Right. Right. Nishta, before we let you go, just a quick question. So these imports that have been declining, is that trend going to continue going forward in FY27 as well? Just a quick answer over there.
Seems so, because the domestic coal production is expected to be on the higher side given the initiatives that are being taken by the ministry and Indian government. So it is likely that imports volumes may come down in the near term.
So it looks great. Import volumes are looking like they will come down. Thank you so much, Nishta, for your time today and joining us and helping us understand the entire coal dynamics here in India. Thanks for joining. All right, with that, we're completely timed out on this edition of Commodity Central. I take your leave, but don't go anywhere. Markets Farafat coming up next.